All right, welcome everyone to episode 8 of Sharks Talk 916, brought to you by Sports Talk 916. You can check out their Facebook page, Sports Talk 916 Network, or find them on sportstalk916.com. We are having a little bit of a different show today. If you're joining us live and you see video, you'll notice there's some strange-looking guy in the place of Nolan. I decided to upgrade the quality of my co-host today. Nolan couldn't be here. He's actually flying from Nashville to Sacramento right now so that he can go to the Game 5 tomorrow in San Jose. So he's lucky. He gets to go to the game. I will be sitting at home watching it again on my television. And we're going to have a little bit of a different format today. I'm going to do a little bit of, whether you want to call it Chad's Corner or Chad's Rant or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to give you all a little speech, and then I'm going to introduce the gentleman who's to my left, if you're watching. And then after that, we're going to just jump into it. It'll be similar to our normal format. We're going to talk about the current series that we're in, what we think so far, and then we're actually going to do a little look ahead. We know now that one of the two teams is going to be playing Boston, so we're going to talk a little bit about what all that's going to entail. And because I can't seem to get away from it, we're going to talk a little bit about officiating. Hopefully this will be the last podcast where I have to discuss officiating, but I feel like we're doing a disservice if we don't say something. So we'll talk about that. So I guess let's just jump right in because I don't have anything more exciting to talk about. So my little speech, I kind of have two things I want to address. So they're related, but first I want to address all NHL fans in case there's any listening who happen to be from a different team besides the one that's next to me. So there's been a lot of complaints about officiating. I think it's a valid complaint for sure. I don't think anyone watching the NHL loves the referees. I think you can go to any stadium and you'll see plenty of signs expressing exactly how much the referees are not loved. But I think that we should all take a little bit of a step back. I don't think that all the talk about how there's the refs or the NHL are, either being paid or have it in for a specific team, want a specific matchup in the final is necessarily true. And I think that to some extent, bad calls happen. Steve, who's joining me, I know plays softball and has probably played other sports in his life. I played, baseball, soccer, football, softball. I played them all competitively. And I don't think I've ever played a game where there wasn't a bad call or a missed call. Or very rarely, certainly not gone through a whole season without bad calls and missed calls that sometimes have a game-changing effect, right? You might feel like you lost by one run or because of some bad call, should have been a foul ball and it wasn't called a foul ball. Or if it's in football, there should have been a face mask and there wasn't, or as we've seen in the NFL, a pass interference when there wasn't. I think that we need to understand, and it's hard as fans because we're all biased. Even I am, and I try to be as objective as possible. But I think we all are more likely to see the penalty against our guy that doesn't get called, right? Or the egregious call of a penalty that we don't think was one when it's our team that gets hurt than we are to see it when it's the other side. So you can watch 40 minutes, 60 minutes of hockey, 59 minutes of hockey. But that hand pass in overtime, that's going to be that was the call that ruined everything, right? That one bad call, that one missed call is what cost us the game. And I think that's not true. I've said this before on the show. I was always raised in all the teams I played on that if one call loses you the game or wins you the game, you weren't in control of the game in the first place, right? Or there's certainly something you could have done earlier in the game that would have made a difference or kept that call from being the thing that cost you, whether it's hitting an empty net, playing better defense when you're on defense, not letting 4 goals go in during a 5-minute penalty. There's always something that you can do, I think, to change the outcome. And I'm really at the point where I almost want to turn off social media, which is a hard thing to do because I want to grow the audience for this show. And it's hard to do that if I'm non-existent from social media. But I've been in so many arguments lately with people who just think there's a blatant, the NHL is paid off and they want the Sharks to go to the finals. And that's why there's all these bad calls. I think that, so I think the most recent example was probably one of the hardest examples. Nolan's chatting in the room right now. Apparently he has landed, so he can't be on the show, but he can sit here and chirp at me. The hand pass is probably to me the worst one because it ended the game. There was no opportunity after it to say, well, the Blues could have made up for it after the call wasn't made or after the goal was scored. That was it. Once the call happens, the game's over. Or doesn't happen, I guess, the game's over. But my message to everybody is kind of just, I get it. You don't like it, be sour about it, be salty about it. I think going after other fans is kind of dumb. I think going after the team is dumb. I don't think the Sharks are making the calls. I think the referees are making the calls. I think referees have a tough job. They're trying to judge one of the fastest games that's played. They're trying to see everything happen when there's 10 guys on the ice they got to keep an eye on, and they're trying to catch every single little thing. I think we need to give them a little bit of a break. That doesn't mean I won't yell, refs, you suck when they make a bad call. But I think harping on it all the time and coming up with conspiracies is just ridiculous. Now, the second message I have is just for Sharks fans. Guys, we've been there plenty of times. Let the other fans be grumpy, all right? Let them be salty. Let them be mad. We've been there. We've seen games called where we thought that a penalty cost us the game or not calling a penalty cost us the game. As early as the first round, I heard Sharks fans talking about how the refs were in it for Vegas, and then we win, and now the storyline's changed, right? So I think lay off the Blues fans or Avs fans don't lay off the Vegas fans. I don't like them, but everybody else's fans, you should be nice to. We've been there. Console them. Say, yeah, we know how that feels. We've been there. Let's keep watching. There's a reason they play 7 games, right? You can say that maybe one game's decided by a bad call, but the idea that you only won this series because of one call is kind of ridiculous because there were 6 other games and you had plenty of opportunity to win. So that's just for me. I'm getting sick of watching the fans get super salty at each other and going back and forth. And I mean, from calling each other idiots to I've literally seen threats on Twitter between fans because they don't agree with each other on who the referees in the NFL NHL, want to get on. So just chill out a bit, everybody. That's, I guess, my overall message. All right. So now that I've bored you all with a monologue, that's not the one I wanted to do. Oh, my second one went away. Okay. Now how do I? So before we talk about the series so far, let me introduce this guy who's sitting with me here. So I have joining me today as my new co-host. If he does a good job, he'll be my permanent co-host. I'll just replace Nolan altogether.
Sweet.
Yeah. Steve Kelley. Let me tell you a little bit about Steve, and then I'll let him tell you about himself. So Steve is basically a softball phenom. He's just great out there. He's got the largest calves you've ever seen on a man. He looks kind of like the guy. Yeah. If you've seen the commercial with the bicyclist, right? He's got the custom calves that are giant. His calves are smaller than Steve's. And probably the worst thing about Steve is that he is a St. Louis Blues fan. I don't know if you're going to sing for us today, but if you want to, I guess I have to let you since they won last night. But otherwise, we could kind of pass.
I think the point of this this show is to get people to watch, and my singing will not draw a crowd, so I will decline the singing for now. But I appreciate the offer.
So tell us a little about yourself, Steve. Tell us about, I guess. Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention. Steve is also actually, this is legit, so I'm not sure he's a softball phenom. He's probably better than me, but that doesn't take much. But he does write actually some pretty great movie reviews on what's the
it's reviewstl.com.
Reviewstl.com. It's actually, I'm not in St. Louis, but he's reviewing movies that are also playing here. So I read his reviews. I find that they're great because they don't spoil movies for me, but they do give me an idea of whether or not I want to go see a movie. So I recommend checking him out on reviewstl.com. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Steve. So what's life like in misery? And
Well, it's pretty warm right now. It's about 85 and pretty humid. But yeah, I've been in St. Louis pretty much my entire life, 35, and I'm a giant Cardinals Blues fan. Used to be a big Rams fan until they left, and I will always give the middle finger to Stan Kroenke. But yeah, I work in IT, and then I do movie reviews on the side, and I try to play softball and not injure myself. Normally, I do injure myself, so that doesn't always work out well. But yeah, I'll actually be out in Sacramento in September for a Midnight Madness tournament. So, if you're listening and play softball and want to meet me, come meet me in September.
Yeah, anybody in the Sacramento area, actually, Steve and I will both be out playing Midnight Madness together, or maybe not together, but for the same. It's unclear. There's going to be a men's team and a co-ed team, and we'll both be playing. So if you want to check out some softball at 2 a.m, come check out Midnight Madness. You can try and stay awake with the rest of us that are on the field. It's some weird thing about IT also, because you work in IT, I work in IT, Nolan works in IT. Apparently, it's a very popular thing for IT crowds to be into hockey. I don't know if it's because our jobs are so boring that we go for the most exciting sport we can find, but
could be.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about. That's it, guys. That's Steve. That's as interesting as he gets. Let's talk a little bit about the series so far. So let's start with how do you think the two teams compare so far? And I'll let you go first since you're the guest.
Sure. I mean, it's basically what I anticipated the first 4 games. I thought it would be split after the first 4 games. I thought even with game 3, notwithstanding the penalty or the hand pass or whatever, I mean, that was a pretty even game. It's the Blues. So the Blues basically, they play an aggressive physical game. Their goal is to try to hit you and get you off your game. Whereas I don't know if the Sharks. I don't watch the Sharks a whole lot, but it just seems like the Sharks have been skating circles around the Blues. I don't know if that's just because the Blues are really, really slow, which they are, or the Sharks are, a very fast team who lay some hits on you. But, the Blues have been trying to get not get penalties, but try to knock the Sharks off their game. And it's just been back and forth. And I don't anticipate this series only going 6 games. I feel like it's going to go full 7. Just because, I mean, our stars match up reasonably well with your guys' stars, and you guys, I feel like you guys might have a slight edge in terms of defense, but I feel like in terms of everything else, it's pretty even except maybe goaltending. I feel like Bennington has been playing out of his mind this year. There's a reason he's a Calder nominee, even though he's only played in 32 regular season games. But I really feel like it's the flip of a coin, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Nolan called it in 6, and I think I was hoping it would be 6, but at this point, I think we're seeing another 7 games. And for the Sharks, that's rough. I mean, that'll be 3 7-game series in a row. If we make it out, going into the finals with 21 games under your belt is rough. That's a lot of physical contact. That's a lot of moving around. I agree with you a lot. I think actually they're a pretty good matchup. If I wasn't a Sharks fan, it'd be very exciting games to watch. If I wasn't dying, of a heart attack while watching the game. Yeah. I think it was kind of funny to me because I knew the Blues were physical. I feel like they came into game 1 trying to push that more than they normally do. They were going out of their way to try to make hits. And that, I feel, is where we made them pay the most, right? Like, when they would actually say, okay, I'm not going to worry about the puck, I'm going to just go hit the guy, we would make passes around them and score goals. They dialed that back some the second game, and they've stuck with what I think is their normal style of play since then, and it's paid off for them. They're definitely more physical. Not that we don't hit, but we rely a lot on stretch passes and getting passes through when we shouldn't, and passing 8 million times in the power play and never shooting, things like that. I think what's amazing to me is how terrible both teams are at power play. I don't know if you expected that coming in, but
well, here's the thing. I mean, for the first half of the season, the Blues power play was atrocious. Like, it was not clicking at all. They were doing terrible. Down the stretch, their power play actually got a lot better. I think they were like a top 5 unit, like, for the last couple months. But there was actually question as to whether or not it really got better or it was the quality of the teams they were playing, because towards the end they're just playing lower teams that were not in the playoffs and they were just dominating the power play. And I don't think anyone really anticipated it being this bad in the playoffs. I mean, up until the last couple of games, they just were terrible. I mean, they were giving up shorthanded goals, and two of them in game two. No one really can anticipate that. I mean, everyone was making jokes about how bad Nashville was in the first round, how they didn't score a single goal. But I mean, up until the last couple of games, the Blues weren't really instilling a lot of confidence either.
Yeah, and the Blues, I think it's kind of funny that I feel like their story is underrated. Like people talk about the Hurricanes and they talk about like the Blue Jackets just squeaking in, right? But the Blues went from being one of the worst teams in the NHL to into the playoffs, right?
January 3rd, they had the fewest points in the NHL.
Yeah. So I mean, you went from the lowest team at the beginning of the year, not the season, the beginning of the new year, to being in the playoffs and playing in the Western Conference Finals. And I think that's a big deal, right? To look at the Blues team. There's not a ton of names where you look at the name and you go, oh yeah, that guy's a superstar NHL player. But they play well as a team. And I think that it's a tribute to how, honestly, I think how well they're coached and how well they came together that they made it this far. I'm sad that they won't be able to move on to the next round, but
okay. Yeah, no, it's ever since when they had Yao at the beginning of the season, they were not clicking at all. For some reason, he had the Blues playing a man-to-man defense, which the Blues don't have the speed to play a man-cover defense. They got guys like Pietrangelo and Bouwmeester who are great physical guys, but they don't have the speed to cover guys individually. So, but once Berube got hired, they went back to a more traditional zone, which they call it like a smothering defense, where basically they have two guys chasing the puck, the man with the puck at all times, and the other guys shift over to cover. And it took a little while to click, and it took really until Binnington came up in January. But after that, everything just started turning around. The defense started giving up fewer shots. The guys that weren't producing, like Tarasenko, Perron, they just started producing like crazy, like we expected them to. The only player offensively who's been consistent the whole season was Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, he was performing even under, and I mean, he was our best offensive player this whole season.
Yeah, I mean, I expected, Tarasenko to look better throughout the season, I guess. Not that he's not looking bad now, although Sharks are a tough team to have one guy that, you kind of count on. So I think he looks a little worse now than he did in the playoffs as a whole. But I guess let me ask this: if you picked one surprise and one disappointment, and you can do one from each team if you want, but what would be in this series or even the playoffs biggest surprise, biggest disappointment?
See, for the Blues, it's probably Jaden Schwartz is the biggest surprise. I mean, we've expected him to score in the past. And he's been a 25 goal scorer in the season, but he only had 11 goals this year, and it was just bad luck. He only shot 6%. He was only shooting 6% in the regular season, but he's really stepped it up. I think he's got 9 goals in the season or the playoffs. Yeah. 9 goals in 17 games is pretty good pace.
Yeah, he's your leader, 9 goals and 13 points in the playoffs.
Yeah, so I mean him, and obviously, I kind of expected him, but Binnington has been absolutely fantastic, especially for a rookie. He just set the Blues franchise record for most wins by a rookie goalie in the playoffs, and I think there's only 9 other NHL goalies who did it their rookie year too. So Binnington's absolutely stepped up as well. In terms of disappointment, that's a tough one. Let me get back to you on that one. Why don't you give us your surprise?
Yeah, and I'll talk from the Sharks' perspective. I mean. My surprise playoffs wise has to be the resurgence of Jones. Just game 5 of the Vegas series, I was assuming Jones would even be in, and then he shows up, and I was like, well, this is gonna suck. And then he just turns it on, and he's been on since then. I mean, even the losses that we've had have not really been his fault. He's been the one keeping us in games. If you watch last night's game, I was amazed it was 2-0 at the end of the first period and not like 5-0 at the end of the first period. But it's because he steps it up and makes some saves. Biggest disappointment right now for me is Hertl, and I would say just for this series. He's been good. He's been decent in the playoffs, but he was really stellar all year. and he's been pretty quiet. And then I guess because I know what Nolan would answer, I'll throw in Evander Kane there as a big disappointment. Kane's been invisible the whole playoffs. Honestly, his best series has been so far against the Blues, and even then, he's inconsequential, right? He might make a hit once in a while, but no goals, nothing really to talk about. And then on your side, I think Bennington was my biggest surprise. I didn't expect him to be that good. I mean, he makes some pretty amazing saves. We're a pretty high scoring team usually, and when we have trouble getting 2 goals in a night where we shoot 30 plus. I think that's a testament to how good the goalie's playing.
The good thing about Bennington, in case Sharks fans aren't really familiar with him, I mean, he's so fundamentally sound. He will always be in the right position to make a save. I rarely see him out of position or rarely blame a goal on him. It's mostly the Blues that have let a man out front unguarded or a bad deflection that goes right by him. But and also his ability to rebound after a loss. I think he was 11-2 this season after the Blues lost a game. So he basically lets it slide off him. It's the old cliche, move on to the next game. That's exactly what he does, and he does it very well. And actually, in terms of my disappointments for this series, I have to say it's Alex Pietrangelo. He's actually had a good playoff overall, 12 points in 17 games. But this series, he's just looked very lost. When the Sharks scored the 2 shorthanded goals, it was basically his turnovers that led to the goals. The game 3, when they at the end of the game, when the Blues were trying to protect the lead, he iced the puck twice, and that gave the Sharks the face-off in the Blues zone and the Blues couldn't change, their players, so they were exhausted. And so he hasn't looked as sharp as he normally does. He's normally considered a great player. It's the reason he's captain, wears a C on the chest. But this series, he's been very, very inconsistent. I wouldn't say he's a complete disappointment, but he hasn't played up to his standard. I bet he would tell you that.
Yeah, I'd say I'm a little surprised by him and by Tarasenko. Like, I expected both of them to be bigger contributors. Although, like I said, we're kind of used to, and I don't know that this is necessarily the case here, but we're kind of used to seeing top line shut down, right? We have especially with Vlasic on the ice. Anytime we can pair Vlasic up with a line, I kind of assume that line's not going to do a whole lot, especially in the playoffs. But I still just thought they would, with our missteps, I thought they would be a bigger thing. Your 4th line last night looked like your best line, and that's honestly kind of scary, because how do you guard against a team that their 4th line can show up and be their best line of the night and be a goal scorers?
Yeah, no, they absolutely. Our 4th line, I think our base overall strength has been our depth. I was actually looking at the stats, and throughout the playoffs, I think the Sharks have 12 guys with 4 points or more, 5 points or more. The Blues have, I think, 16, and they have another guy with 4 points, maybe, or something like that. But basically, we have guys who are producing on every line. Our 4th line has been great. Guys that we don't normally expect to score, like Pat Maroon, Bozak, they've been given chances or making chances. Our rookie Robert Thomas, if you don't know his name now, you'll probably know his name within the next few years. When the Blues traded for Ryan O'Reilly, our GM Armstrong basically made him untouchable. Said you can have anyone you want, but Thomas. He struggled a bit at the beginning of the season, but once Berube came on, he started playing with a little bit more confidence. He's just been getting better and better. He's actually staying with the Tkachuk family, and so it's kind of nice for him to not only stay with 2 current NHL players, but Keith Tkachuk, who's one of the greatest power forwards of all time. It's great to have him mentoring him. And I think that he's actually been, if it's not, Schwartz, it's probably been Thomas has been our best player in the playoffs, because he doesn't have the stats on, but it seems like he always creates scoring opportunities.
And we talk about that a lot on here, because we have players like that where they don't have the goals necessarily, right, or the points, but what they do on the ice is more important than scoring a goal. I was going to bring up one of Steve Cropper, one of our frequent listeners. He said the Sharks' biggest problem is that we wonder if they want it bad enough, right? If they're going to show up each game. And I think that it's not even each game; it's each period. I mean, I don't know. You've seen a little bit of the Sharks now, but for us, it's like, okay, we're going to have, like last game, if we played the first period the way we played the second and third, we could have won that game. But it took that first period for the team to go, oh, we should come out and be serious about playing here, in St. Louis. I don't know if they got cocky. I mean, they barely won the game before, so it's not like we have anything to be overly confident about. But if they didn't think the Blues were going to come out strong and pushing at the beginning of that game, that's just stupid to me. You have to be ready for that. And you guys scored 35 seconds into the game or something?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that the Blues talked about before the game. They said that we basically want to come out, kind of metaphorically punch the Sharks in the mouth and let them know that we're here, and they're actually talking about trying to get some bad angle shots on Martin Jones. Like, I don't know if it's true, but, they said that they thought they could maybe get him in a bad angle shot, just catch him unaware. And that kind of seems like it's what happened on the first goal. Like, they took a shot and he was just he wasn't anticipating. So, he tried to lift his arm up, but it seems like he wasn't anticipating that quick shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that if you're going to shoot, it's a quick shot and it's usually up. If you can shoot up, you can get past Jones. That's where he's had trouble, at least this season, a lot, is the high shots. But yeah, I think it wasn't just Jones unaware. It was, where was our defense, right? I mean, you shouldn't even no one should be able to shoot from there without somebody in their way or somebody getting in front of a puck. But it's like the Sharks just didn't expect the Blues to come out and skate at the beginning. I don't know. Like you said, it's kind of funny that we seem like a fast team. I don't think the Sharks are necessarily a fast team. They have a couple fast players, but they do seem faster when you're looking at them on the ice with the Blues, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it really. It just, your speed seems like it's more obvious maybe on the power play than the penalty kill. Like when you're passing around the perimeter and like when you're killing, it seems like there's always constantly pressure on the Blues, whereas the Blues are much more passive, especially on the penalty kill. They just try to play a passive box, and it just seems like you guys skate around this and you just get good opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. PK is always one thing I'm impressed with the Sharks. I don't think there's been a single game where I haven't thought our PK was good. It's kind of our saving grace. And we actually score on it, which is the funniest thing to me. Is I don't think we're number one, but we're one of the top teams on getting shorthanded goals this season. So I'm never too worried. We always joke maybe we can decline penalties and not play power play and just take, PK and 5-on-5 because we feel, or 4-on-4 we really like too. The Sharks tend to do pretty well 4-on-4. All right, so that's exciting stuff. What? Any big surprises in general? To me, it's not. I'm not surprised by this series. I feel like I kind of felt these teams were pretty well matched going in. I was more surprised by game one as how well the Sharks, how dominant the Sharks were in game one. And I don't know if that was just coming out excited to be there or what. But once it settled down, it seems a lot like what I expected. Right, 1 point, 2 point games if you count an empty netter, but pretty closely matched teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, we just met in the conference finals, 3 years ago? And I mean, at that point, you guys completely manhandled us. I remember specifically Tarasenko was completely silent that series because Vlasic was just shut him down. So I mean, yeah, we've added a few players, we traded a few players, but at the same time, it still feels like it's very, very familiar. It's I forget what the ship of something where basically if you keep replacing the pieces of a ship, is it still the same ship? It is, because you guys are still playing the familiar game that you guys have always played, and you've also added Erik Karlsson, who is he hurting still? And I guess I know he missed a lot of time with his groin, but it seems like he was off the ice quite a bit yesterday.
Yeah, he was. So actually, that's one thing I didn't put in the agenda, but now's a good time to talk about it. So it looks like Karlsson is re-injured, at least a little bit. There's not a lot of the Sharks are really bad or good, I guess, depending on how you look at it, at sharing information about injuries. So there's no real news about him being injured, but he was laboring out there skating, he's one of our best skaters. So it's been pretty rough having him have a groin injury of all things because he's not getting around the ice as well. Nolan honestly didn't predict that he wouldn't make it through the first round, that he'd come back and re-injure. He actually got better and better, but I don't know if it was you guys were laying some hits on him. I would say target him a bit, which I don't blame him. If you know there's a guy who's not 100% and you can take someone like him out of the game, or at least make him less of an impact, you go for it. And I think it's just gotten to him. I can't imagine it's anything other than his groin being re-injured. Although he's been interesting. I was talking about him the other day with Nolan, and I think that he's become almost like the Brett Burns of old. So he's become an offensive player for sure. I think he's got 13 points this playoffs and 14 maybe, and a couple goals, tons of assists. But he's starting to become a little bit of a defensive liability. Partially, I think, because he can't skate the way he used to. There's been a number of the Blues goals where I feel Karlsson's been on the ice and hasn't done, I think, his best job at trying to stop them, and I think it's just a mobility issue. So it's something we're gonna have to work through. If he's really hurt, then we're gonna see Heed come in probably instead of Karlsson, and that's a whole different defensive makeup. I don't know how we're gonna juggle those pairings, but it's not something we're looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, the Blues are having to do something similar now that Dunn, he took that slap shot off the face, and he's not posting a lot of big stats offensively, but he is by far our best young defenseman. But now that he's out, we played Gunnarsson last night, and he did okay. I mean, the Blues did fine. Obviously, they got the win, but it's definitely the Blues are a different team when we have Dunn out there on the ice. So he's not quite on the level of Karlsson, obviously, but I can definitely understand. You guys having to adjust your lines and everything.
Yeah, and for the Sharks fans, the big question is, does Karlsson come back next season? And I've been reading some new stuff coming out, and I honestly don't think he stays. Cup or not, I think that he's gone at the end of the season. He's a good guy. I like the way he fits on the team, but he's really expensive. And if he is re-injured, you have the question of, is he going to get better? Is he ever going to be 100% again? Or the guy he was before? Is he worth $11 or $12 million a year to keep him around? And with the way the cap is, we might lose other players if we don't get a discount on him. So I'm not sure it's worth the risk to pay him to stick around and then possibly lose like Joe Pavelski, who's up and who's going to ask for a raise. I think correctly so. I think he deserves a raise from what he's making. And then I don't know. Anyways, it's a question we always get. I don't think Karlsson's coming back, but I think he's going to play his hardest to try to get a cup before he gets out of the Sharks. All right, so let's move on to the topic I don't love, but let's talk about it because I'm kind of excited about it now. I've been reading up on a lot of different proposals and ideas. So we're going to revisit the officiating issue. So everybody knows this, but at the end of game 3 in overtime, there's a hand pass. I'm going to call it a hand pass. I'm not going to slow the video down to microseconds to try to see how much contact was made between the glove and the puck. I'm just going to say it was a hand pass. Had I been on the ice as an official, I would have definitely called it. So hand pass from Timo, right? There's a pass afterwards, and then a goal. Sharks win it in OT. And we're back to the whole argument of, the officiating is just helping the Sharks out this year, and they decided the game by not making that call. And I have a couple thoughts on that call in general. First off, they can't call something they don't see. So I mean, we have the luxury of being a bird's eye view. We see more of the ice than necessarily a single official seeing at one time. We have the benefit of having announcers tell us that there's something, of quickly showing a replay, right, and making it obvious that there's a bad call there. To me, I think they hurt themselves by getting together and even huddling. I think they didn't make a call. It's not something that was reviewable anyways. By getting together and huddling, you're already setting that expectation that something's coming, or that there's a conversation about this. The Sharks go off the ice and people are mad at them for leaving the ice, but honestly, they know what's up. They can't go back and review it. They can't pull that goal back. So there's some changes. There's some questions here about how do we change that. And I know I've seen a little bit from you. You pulled down one thread that you had on Facebook that I commented on. But I think there is room for improvement, certainly. The question becomes, what exactly do you do? Do you add that one thing on as something you can check for? Do you say any goal scored, you immediately review it? And if so, how far back do you go? Like, what do you think are some changes that can be made? And I can go over some that I think we should do.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, the only really one that I would be completely in favor of, and I know this would open up a can of worms. But basically, once they enter the zone, basically make that entire possession reviewable, and that would possibly add on a lot of minutes of review time, and it may make people unhappy. But if they can actually review offsides, if they can see whether a player his skate blade is a quarter of an inch over the line before a goal, then I don't see why they wouldn't be able to go back to that time to when the puck and the players enter the zone and review the rest of the series or the rest of the possession. Now, again, that could be a bad thing. I don't know. That's basically above my pay grade. People a lot more intelligent than I, make a lot more money than I guess that's their call. But I guess that would be the only really reasonable one that would make sense to me.
Well, and it's weird, right? So, Steve from the comment section is asking what you think about the delay of game. I'll talk about that in a minute because that's a corollary to one of my things. So I think that they do that in the NFL technically, right? They review every scoring play to look for whatever it is they're looking for to determine whether or not it was actually a touchdown. My problem is that what's reviewable in that span of time? Everything. And if you go back and review and you see there was a penalty on the defensive side, do you assess that penalty and then give the team who just scored a goal a power play? I guess you wouldn't because it would negate the power play in the first place. But offsides is already reviewable. Goaltender interference is already reviewable. I've seen them review a high touch, right? Causing a goal.
Yeah.
But then I've seen the opposite where if the goaltender interference happens before the goal, then it's not a reviewable thing. That happened to us in the Vegas game where we score a goal, everybody's celebrating, and they're like, wait, no, there's no goal because Logan Couture had goaltender interference. But you can't challenge it because it was before the goal was scored, so we can't go back and look at it. And then we put the Kings on power play and they score. So you have a 2-goal swing, really, from what turned out to be a bad call. He wasn't even in the paint. The goalie came out and made contact with him. My question is, and I'm going to ask this because I have a couple ideas on where we should go with this. There's a lot of talk about game-changing calls, right? So those are the important ones. We want to make sure we get the game-changing ones, which is where the idea of how about if there's a goal scored, we make sure we review because that's a game-changing call or no call. I think that takes a lot away from how the game is played. I think that to think that that's the only time you have a game-changing call or no call is to ignore how hockey's played. And so I'll go back to Steve's point. There's a delay of game over glass, like pretty clearly in a replay by Perron, who's having a great series, has a great game that game. And at least the first goal that he scores, he should have been in the penalty box and Sharks should have been on a power play. So that is a game-changing no call. But it wouldn't have been reviewable by the new rules if you say goals are reviewed from the time they enter the zone. That's not a reviewable thing, right? The puck's out, there's a stoppage in play, there's a face-off, game starts again. So nothing with the delay of game would have been reviewable, but certainly that does change the outcome of the game somehow.
Right.
Would you agree? I mean,
yeah, no, I agree 100%. And like you said, Steve asked about the delay game, and I can't say anything other than it was a missed call. It should have gone. It should have been a delay game penalty. Do I think that should be a penalty in the future? I'm actually not in favor of it. One of my friends said this, and I agree. It should be almost treated like an icing because most of the time, the guys who get the delay game for that, they're not trying to actually chip it into the crowd to stop the game. They're trying to get it hit the boards and get it out of their zone.
yeah.
But the fact is that right now that's the rule, so it should have been a delay game.
And I would say that's my first step. So before I even want to talk about replay, I think we need to talk about revisiting the rules and not just delay a game over glass, which I do think should be an icing, essentially, right? You delay a game, okay, you can't do a change. You have a face-off in the zone, and then we all move on with our lives. Or maybe, I saw someone else who said, what if we just eliminate hand pass as a penalty? What if we eliminate a high touch for a goal as a penalty? What if we eliminate kicking as a penalty? What if we just say, if you can get the puck in the net without, a physical penalty against the other team, it's a goal. I keep goaltender interference because I think that's one you can't get rid of. You can't let people tie up a goalie and pretend like it's not a big deal. But I think it would be perfectly fair to say, let's make hand passes legal in all the zones. Let's make a high touch to knock in a goal fine. Let's make kicking a puck into a net fine. I mean, they're all athletic plays. I don't think there's any necessarily bad thing. None of them are really a bad thing necessarily. What do you think about just kind of loosening, like cutting some of the rules, and also I would say revisiting ones for better definitions? Like goaltender interference needs to be better defined and called in a more consistent manner.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think goaltender interference is one of the biggest things that they need to address, because they are so inconsistent in how they call it. In regards to hand passing and high stick high touches for goals, I feel like it's something we can discuss. I don't know. That's tough, because especially I'm not really in favor of necessarily amending the rules for those. And kicking, I don't know. We'll see. I never really considered that too much. Because I mean, technically, I guess you can kick it to another player, right? You can kick it basically anywhere. So why would it affect a goal? Why would it be different for a goal? But I don't know. I feel like that's something they could address, definitely. But yeah, goaltending interference above all, they need to address.
I think the other thing is, if you do eliminate some of those rules, it's less for the officials to have to keep an eye out for, right? So when you're watching a scoring play, you're not watching for goaltender interference and for a possible hand pass and how high was the stick, and did they, if it comes off a skate, was it a stick kicking motion, or was it just that it came off a skate when they were stopping normally or standing there and doing nothing? And I think that the other, in general, and cross check would be the other one that I feel like we need to redefine, because the way it's defined, it doesn't get called hardly ever. If you read the definition, cross checks happen all game long and no one ever calls them. And so then when they do call one, everybody's up in arms because it's a hockey play as far as everyone's concerned. It's not a penalty.
Yep.
But I think there are some things we could do. So I actually like the idea of reviewing all goals. I like the idea of a press box official. So you have an official who's basically got a bird's eye view of the game and some ability to look at replay, who can call down and basically say, hey, we need to stop and take a look at this. Because I think the officials on the ice don't have enough vision to see everything that's going on necessarily. We see a lot of stuff happen away from plays that, the TV sees it and the radio announcers see it, but an official doesn't see it because they're too busy watching the puck and what's going on there. And then the last one I like is, I saw someone on the Athletic, I read an article in the Athletic where they asked a bunch of the reporters what they think. And one said, give coaches one review of anything, basically, that like in any penalty, they can call a review for once in a game. So if we keep delay of game over glass as a penalty and the coach is pretty sure that was a delay of game over glass, he can challenge it at the stoppage of play, right? He can say, okay, I want that review. That was a delay of game over glass. Only once. So you got to be picky what you choose to review, because you don't want to review an icing and then have a major penalty later that gets missed. But that at least gives the coaches some ability to challenge something that makes a big impact on the game, regardless of whether it's what we currently consider a challengeable penalty, right? Just any penalty.
Yeah, I like that. I would not be opposed to that.
But I do get the fear, right? The big fear is it slows the game down. They've done a lot to speed the game up and to increase goal scoring and that kind of stuff. And I think it's somewhat counterintuitive to start putting a replay on everything, because then you're getting to where baseball is now, where every time some guy slides, you got to take the already longest game possible in the world and you make it longer by adding more stuff into it. I'm not a baseball fan. I shouldn't say I'm not a baseball fan. I love the sport of baseball. I can't stand watching Major League Baseball, but it's funny because I hear people on both sides who say, "Oh, look, the NBA gets it right," or Major League Baseball is doing it right, or the NFL is doing it right. And then I hear fans all the time who are like, "God, this just slows the game down. Who cares about all these challenges? Like, just play the game." So the other option I saw, which I thought was very funny, was literally just get rid of all reviews. Just go back to everybody plays and lives with what the calls are on the ice. Like that's the way it is. The way it used to be back before we had television reviews. And my only problem with that is the fans won't accept it, because we get to see replays and we get to see slow-mos and we get to see too much between social media and television that I don't think the fans would accept there not being some recourse when there's bad calls.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Cool. Best co-host ever. See, I just say things and he agrees with me. This is the reverse of how it normally goes. Normally Nolan says things that are really smart and insightful, and then I just nod my head and say, yeah, that sounds good. So this is good. It's interesting to do this from Nolan's seat. So do you have anything you want to talk about on the officiating problem before we move on?
No, and here's the thing, like, as a Blues fan, I was incredibly upset when it happened. Obviously, you saw my reaction on Facebook. In hindsight, though, when you get a chance to actually like sit back, and analyze it, it sucked. It was, in fact, the game-winning goal. But at the same time, as you brought up too, the Blues had multiple chances. Blues were winning with a minute left. They had multiple chances to score on an empty net. We missed the net twice. We iced the puck, and that led directly to the game-tying goal. And even then, even if they disallowed the goal in overtime, there's no guarantee, that Blues will end up winning or anything. So, it sucks. It really does. And I get it. I'm still not 100% over it. But at the same time, it's like, we got to move on. I don't blame the Sharks at all. I saw one of my friends actually post on Facebook, maybe their coach should decline the goal out of sportsmanship. No, I don't agree with that at all.
Happen.
Yeah. No, if the roles were reversed, the Blues would have taken that win, and I would have been happy. It's over. We move on. We thankfully tied the series up, and we just hope that we can get 2 of the next 3.
Well, it's like I think that the interviews after the game are always funny, right? Like they're fishing because they think DeBoer or one of the players is going to come out and be like, "Oh yeah, it was terrible. We shouldn't have gotten that. They should have called that hand pass. We never should have gotten the goal. We shouldn't have won the game." No one's ever going to come out and say that. They're going to always say, "Yep, it's a good goal. That's the breaks. That's what happens in sports." That's always going to happen, and I think that like you said, there's. I don't know why you guys can't hit an empty net. It's the most interesting thing to watch. I used to think we had problems with it. You and I were talking about this last night. Like the Sharks have had trouble hitting empty nets this season, and I'm like, well, how ridiculous is it that we can't hit an empty net? And then I've watched the Blues now for 2 games, just never hit an empty net with multiple opportunities, and I think that's just crazy.
It's been the Achilles heel of our team for a few years now. Our 6-on-5 is just, for whatever reason, I have zero confidence in their ability to close out the game. It's just I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seems like at least a third of the time we end up giving up the game tying goal, like with an empty net. It's just it's frustrating. I don't know what we can do about it, but it's something you're going to see basically the rest of the playoffs. If the Blues are in a spot where they're up by a goal with a couple minutes left.
Yeah, so last night's game was way more exciting at the end than it needed to be, because there were multiple times when I thought, oh, it's over. They've got the puck. It's going to be an empty net goal, and then the puck sails to an icing, and I'm like, okay, well, the Sharks get a face-off now in the offensive zone again. Multiple times here we went through this. So yeah, it's like I said, I think that's for me the big takeaway from all sports, right? Is I get that there's that you don't like bad calls, and I didn't blame you for being upset. I mean, I was on Twitter right away saying, "Hey, that was a hand pass. You know, the officials should catch that. It should be a penalty they call." And I feel for the Blues fans because we've seen that kind of stuff happen to us before. But like you said, and like I've said, there's lots of things you can do in other parts of the game that wouldn't have put you in that position in the first place. Even letting us get tied up in the first place. I mean, not going to OT would be good. All right, so let's move on from officiating problems because hopefully I never have to talk about this again, but I'm guessing I will.
Oh, yeah.
So let's look ahead. So one of the two teams, and either one that wins I'm going to be rooting for, either Sharks or Blues are going to be playing Boston. So from a Blues perspective, which team do you think has the better matchup against Boston? Do you think either one? Does either one have an advantage?
I think it's going to be tough either way. I mean, obviously, as I said earlier, the Bruins' best player has been Tuukka Rask. You know, I'm looking at stats right now, and in the playoffs this postseason, he's got 942 save percentage, 1.84 goals allowed per game, 2 shutouts. You know, he's literally been playing out of his mind. And I saw a stat on Reddit the other day. In games where the Blue Bruins had the opportunity to clinch, he has a 990 save percentage. I think he saved like 95 shots and 96 attempts. It's insane. But you know, on top of that, the Bruins, they have plenty of high scoring, high skill players. You know, Marchand, who I cannot stand, but I will admit, he's a fantastic player. But you know, they also have Pasternak, and Bergeron, Krejci. I mean, they just got so many guys who can score goals on you. I think it'll be a tough matchup for either team. As far as the Blues, if the Blues had advanced, I don't know. I feel like the Bruins would just have the ability to skate circles around our defense, and maybe our defense can stand up to them. But it'd be a pretty tough test.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of talk, obviously, from Sharks fans, but even from I've seen some national viewer talk about Logan Couture, being the Conn Smythe guy. And I think that I definitely think he's in the running, but I think people who discount Tuukka Rask haven't been paying attention to the East Coast at all. He's been stellar through the whole playoffs, and he's been clutch whenever they need him. As much as Logan Couture is clutch. Rask has been clutch for his team as well. We were talking before the show started about how it's really been a story of goaltending through a lot of the playoffs this season. And I don't think that's weird. I think goaltending wins you playoffs. But, whether it's Jones' resurgence or the way Bennington's playing or the way Rask is playing, like goalies seem to be the real difference maker this season. Because you can have a team like the Sharks that have a ton of goal scorers, but if their goalie's playing out of his mind, it doesn't matter. I think that, I don't know. I think it's tough. I think you guys have a little bit of edge when it comes to physicality. Maybe you can stand up to Boston a little more, who's a very physical team. But I think, like you said, I think speed-wise, we have a little bit of an edge there over you guys being able to skate with Boston when it's really unfair that a team can both skate well or can skate well, can score goals, and is extremely physical. Like, I feel like you should only be blessed with 2 things, not 3 things. And I almost named this. I'm glad you brought up Marchand, because I almost named this the Blues Sharks Friendship Hour. This part of the agenda, because how much do you hate Marchand? I mean, oh
God, so much. I don't know who I hate more. Him or Tom Wilson are both at the top of the list of players that I cannot stand. It's a short list, but it's just he's so. I don't know. I can't. I feel like I can't use these words on this video, but
you can. We're explicit. You're fine. Go ahead.
Oh shit! He's a dirty asshole. I can't stand the guy. I just seen him take way too many penalties, suspensions, fines. You see him slew foot people. You see him, elbow people in the face, and he never is. He's never sorry for it. He just takes the suspension, the fine, and 2 games later when he comes back, he does the same thing. And I can't stand players like that. Because, I mean, he is one of the most talented players in the league. He scored 100 points this year. You can't deny that he's got the skill and the ability to play and be one of the best players. It's just if he had took that annoyance, I guess, attempt to annoy and agitate people down like just a notch, like he'd be much more respected and liked.
Well, I think that's the difference, right? Like, I mean, I hate Reeves less than I hate Marchand, and Reeves is a dirty player and goes out and is a goon and gets in your head and all that stuff. But Reeves isn't nearly as talented as Marchand is. Like, when you're that talented, I feel like you can just get by on being a great hockey player. You don't need all that other crap on the ice. The punch in the back of the head, after a play is done, and like you said, just not sorry for it. Not going to change who he is. He said 6 suspensions, I think, and then a handful of fines as well. Just hate the guy. Not a huge. Boston is one of those cities where it's just easy to hate all their teams.
Well, I will say this, being from St. Louis, and the fact that in 2001 the Patriots beat the Rams, 04, 2013 they beat the Cardinals. They beat the Blues in one of the first years during the Stanley Cup when the Blues were in it. And then actually when St. Louis had an NBA team, the Hawks. I believe the Hawks faced the Celtics 4 times in the championship, and the Boston beat them 3 times. Like, we do have one NBA championship, I guess, but Boston is one of those probably the one town that I would not be upset if they never won another championship.
Yeah, they're just, I don't know. The Celtics, I think I told you that, or said this to you, I said to somebody, but the Celtics are the one Boston team that I don't automatically hate. Because I've never, I don't know, they've never been in a position where I felt like I enjoyed when I was a kid, right, watching Boston play, like, and watching, got Jordan playing for the Bulls and you've got Bird playing for the Celtics. Like, I enjoyed those days, and I don't watch basketball anymore, so it's not something that I worry about. But yeah, every other team, if they're on, I want them to lose.
Yeah, and I will say I'm not really a big NBA fan, so I don't have like a big rooting interest there. But the Celtics do also have a St. Louis native, Jason Tatum. So, if they end up winning next year, I wouldn't be super upset for them. But, the Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, they can.
For those listening, that doesn't make good podcasting, but that's fine. There was a specific hand motion being made by Steve on the video. All right, well, that's everything on our agenda. Do you have any last thoughts or anything you want to say? Since this may
No, I'd like to thank you guys for letting me be on. I've enjoyed the series so far, and I'm hoping it goes a full 7. I won't make any predictions who's going to win. I'll hope it's the Blues, but either way, let's just hope for a few more games of good, clean hockey.
Yeah, I'm hoping for Sharks in 6 so I can rest a little bit, but I'm guessing it's going to be 7 games and then it's going to be just a toss-up. I don't know who's going to win either, unfortunately. So real quick before we head off, any questions from the audience, from our live audience for our Blues visitor? No? No jeering or trash talking, nothing?
I was expecting some trash talk. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed, I guess.
Well, I did ask for people to be on their best behavior when I invited them on. I didn't, or to look. I didn't want them to be too mean. This is a togetherness episode. We're trying to bring the fans together.
I gotcha.
Well, thanks for joining us, Steve. Actually, probably one of our better episodes. I might just replace Nolan permanently with you. So this has been Sharks Talk 916. You guys can check us out. We tweet at Sharks Talk 916. We're on Facebook on the Sports Talk 916 network page and online at sportstalk916.com. I always promise at the end of every episode that we're going to blog, and then we never do. But we will, I swear, write a blog post at some point on the website. I've been spending my days where there isn't a game recovering from watching the game. So I haven't been writing about hockey. I've just been trying to avoid it, usually on my days off. But thanks again, Steve, for joining us, and thanks everybody for coming in, and have a great day.
No problem. Go Blues.
Go Sharks.